Gaza just held its first vote in 20 years, but Hamas couldn't run. Only 23% turned out, and a 90-year-old president who's never faced re-election is claiming it's a step towards statehood. Who actually won here? Let's see the one we got.
There were long lines outside one of the makeshift polling stations in Deir el-Balah. People were keen to cast their ballots before voting closed in the central Gaza town. It was forced to shut at 6 p.m. A lack of electricity in the war-ravaged area meant no voting after dark. Officials have had to improvise amid widespread destruction.
We manufactured the ballot boxes locally. We produced 110 boxes for use at polling stations. The ballot papers were printed in the Gaza Strip. We used an effective alternative to the electoral ink by using special ink pens provided by the World Health Organization.
At the same time, voting took place across the whole of the occupied West Bank. It's under the administrative control of the Fatah party of 90-year-old Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Independent polling says Hamas, the group that carried out the October 7th, 2023 terror attacks against Israel, is still the most popular political faction in both Gaza and the West Bank. But there are no lists officially associated with Hamas in either territory. The vote in Gaza is being seen as largely symbolic. It's being held only in Deir el-Balah, one of the few areas in the enclave not to have experienced an Israeli ground invasion.
So this isn't like this isn't across all of Gaza. This is one small part of Gaza that's having an election. I hear there were recent elections in Gaza. Can you tell me more about it? Was it all of Gaza voting? Let's see, we got thinking on. Perfect.
Hopefully the rest of the governorates and the entire Gaza Strip will have elections and be distinguished after the fierce war. These 2.5 years of war, destruction, homes and broken streets, and we will see, God willing, our cities improve.
The Palestinian Authority also hopes the election there will help reinforce its claim to authority over the territory after its ouster by Hamas in 2007. It has, however, faced accusations of being both corrupt and ineffectual.
DW correspondent Emily Gordine has been covering the story from the occupied West Bank, and a short while ago I asked her how elections looked there and in Gaza's Deir al-Balah.
Well, in Gaza, elections are taking place in rubble and amid continued airstrikes. In the last 48 hours, Israeli airstrikes have killed about 17 Palestinians.
So, Israel is still bombing Gaza? I thought this part of the war was over. But let's see what it says here. You're correct. There was a significant election held just this past weekend on Saturday, April 25th, 2026. 2 days ago. However, it was a very specific and limited vote rather than a general election for the entire territory. Here are the key details regarding what took place. Where did the voting happen? It was not all of Gaza. The election was held only in the city of Deir al-Balah, central Gaza. This city was chosen largely because it remained relatively intact compared to other parts of the Strip following the conflict the past 2 years. Outside of Gaza, the election also took place across the 183 local councils in the West Bank. So the West Bank is map up. I want this one. So we have Lebanon, we have Israel here. We have the Gaza Strip, which is this dotted line, and the West Bank, which is this dotted. a much larger part. Compared to Gaza. Well, Gaza's like mostly city from what I understand. But yeah, Israel. Okay. It's not the one I was reading. This is These were municipal elections, so the local government, meaning voters were choosing members for local councils that managed day-to-day services like water, roads, electricity. It was not a presidential or legislative election. The Palestinian Authority has not held a general election since 2006. Why this is a big deal? First in 20 years, this was the first time any part of Gaza had participated in an election since 2006. PA involvement. The vote was organized by the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority. Since Hamas took control of Gaza in 2007, the PA has effectively been unable to operate there. So holding this vote in Gaza was a major symbolic attempt at showing territorial unity. The role of Hamas did not officially field candidates, as the rules required candidates to recognize the Palestinian Liberation Organization platform, which includes recognizing Israel. However, they did not block the election from happening. Turnout results. The participation rate holds two different stories. Turnout was quite low at roughly 23%. Officials attributed this to the massive displacement of residents and outdated voter registries. In the West Bank, turnout was much higher at approximately 56%. Outcome: the Fahad movement, led by President Mahmoud Abbas, claimed a sweeping victory in most contested areas, including seats in Deir al-Balah, though many independent lists also won seats. The Palestinian Authority has described this as a pilot, a potential first step towards long-delayed general elections for a president and parliament, though no dates for those have been set. Is Israel still bombing Gaza? What's the frequency and how many have died?
People in Deir al-Balah, in sort of south.
There it is, Deir al-Balah. Balah? Let me hear it one more time.
In Deir al-Balah, in
Deir al-Balah. Not how I was saying it. Deir al-Balah. Okay, as of late April 2026, the situation in Gaza has shifted from high-intensity war footing of 2023-2024 to a complex, fragile state of intermittent conflict under an effective ceasefire. Are they still bombing? Yes, but the frequency and nature of airstrikes have changed significantly. A formal ceasefire began October 11, 2025. Since then, large-scale area carpet bombing has largely ceased in favor of targeted strikes. Strikes are now described as sporadic or intermittent. In the last 24 hours, for example, only 2 fatalities were reported, which is a stark contrast to the hundreds per day seen at the peak of the conflict. Peace deal implementation. Under a 20-point peace deal brokered earlier this year, Israel has withdrawn its forces to predetermined lines, though it still maintains administrative and security control over approximately 53% of the Gaza Strip. Death toll statistics. Okay, there, we kind of already went into that. Current living conditions. While the bombing is less frequent, the humanitarian crisis remains. Much of the territory is without consistent electricity. A recent strike on a power line in early April 2026 cut off drinking water for nearly 500,000 people in the south. As we discussed regarding the recent vote in Deir al-Balah, there are attempts to transition back to local municipal control, but the IDF chief of staff recently warned that 2026 will likely remain a year of fighting as the military manages multiple fronts, including Lebanon and Iran. The shift towards local elections and the implementation of a peace deal suggest a move towards stabilization. The peace remains a high-tension military occupation in over half the territory. So that's what's currently going on in Gaza. I mean, like, elections are better than no elections. It is a good first sign. Moving back to something more stable. Okay, where were we?
Sort of south to centre Gaza, that's where people have been allowed to cast their ballot. They've been doing so under difficult circumstances because ballot boxes were not allowed into the territory by the Israeli authorities. They've had to build their own.
So they had to build their own ballot boxes?
Ballot boxes from the rubble. Ink has also been difficult to get in, which is why Palestinians have had to use a material used by UNICEF to mark children.
Like that. That looks like a pretty good ballot box, all things considered. Like,
who have been vaccinated as a sort of stamp or signature in some form on these ballots, as we understand. Now, in the West Bank, the situation is obviously very different. It's not done in rubble, but it is done. The elections are taking place amid settler violence. We've heard of several reports of settler violence in villages where elections are taking place. So, all in all, difficult circumstances.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. Do these elections feel relevant to Palestinians, or do they feel sort of disconnected from real power?
It really depends on who you speak to. We were earlier in a village called Sinjal, and the school where people cast their ballots, it was bustling. It was full of people, keen to cast their ballot, to cast their vote, because they say it is their democratic duty. They understand themselves as a democratic country, as a democratic nation, and they see it as imperative to use that voice and to use that say in these municipal elections to find a leader that represents them. But we've also seen villages in which not a single person went out and voted. And so it really depends on who you speak to.
like that's like, it could just be like suppression there, right? Like, you've seen issues of violence. So from my understanding, I don't want to go too into this because I don't have the details. When they say settler violence, the West Bank is largely a Palestinian area. Israel has created a lot of settlements within the West Bank, where primarily Israelis live. And so they largely call them settlers. And so when they're saying settler violence, they're referring to these communities that have been built within the West Bank that are violent towards the communities that were already there. I think, my understanding of it. I mean, that this is one of the sections of the world that is complicated.
See these elections as a form of democratic participation, and then others see it as delegitimate and not really free elections.
Emily, how is Israel viewing these elections?
Well, the average Israeli will not know that Palestinians are holding municipal elections. But the security apparatus in Israel has undoubtedly been watching the developments in the occupied West Bank and Gaza very carefully. We've been able to speak to certain people on the ground in the occupied West Bank telling us that certain candidates...
What was I asking last? Can you give me a breakdown of what's happening in the West Bank? Like, I said it was a complicated thing, so I should at least provide some context to make sure I'm not completely off base.
Who previously had wanted to run, had been receiving calls by Israeli military officials urging them not to put themselves forward, not to be a candidate, and so they actually
that does not sound like a free election. That's for
They
sure.
withdrew their candidacy because of their political background. You have to understand Hamas and also the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. These are two parties that are seen as terrorist organizations by Israel, and not just by Israel, also many European countries and the US see Hamas, for example, as a terrorist organization, and therefore they are seen as completely illegitimate. And so candidates who might have run as independents, who had wanted to run as independents, who might have had some certain affiliations with these groups, have then been urged not to run.
I mean, like, she's old enough that she remembers when it was a democratic place. Because there hasn't been any from 2006, but before that it was a democratic country, essentially.
These elections.
The election officials say the goal is to link the West Bank and Gaza politically as one system. So does this vote bring the territories closer together or highlight how divided they are?
It was very difficult to tell from on the ground. The realities in Gaza and the West Bank are vastly different. But the signal that the election committee wanted to send here is that it is one nation, it is one people, and they should be treated as such. There shouldn't be a separate Gaza and a separate occupied West Bank. There should be one entity, it should be seen as one entity, and that is the political signal that this sends. But of course, the reality and oftentimes also the political opinions on the ground will vary vastly, also depending on the realities that people live through day in and day out.
Right, Emily, we'll leave it there, but really great to get that update from you. Emily Gordine, DW correspondent, joining us today from the occupied West Bank. Thanks so much.
Yeah, like they
Well,
still
Emily
call it the
Gordine
occupied
has
West
been talking to Palestinian voters in the West Bank today, asking what these elections meant to them.
This is a democratic celebration for us. It's important to vote for someone who serves you and represents you in your Palestinian society.
We are a democratic country. We must aspire towards change.
I mean, democracy has been proven to work. I don't think it's the only working system, but from my understanding, it is the best. Like, giving people a vote in their leadership is very conducive to creating a stable country.
Towards a new reality where we avoid destruction.
And the opposite gets you the opposite effects. Not giving people a say tends to not be conducive to a stable country.
People today are living without goals in their lives. Very young men with no goals. And many young people want to get married or want to secure accommodation. And there's no one to guide them or to support them. Unemployment is very high.
We're not expecting the mayor to remove a checkpoint or the fence around Sinjil, but he can contribute in developing the town, creating opportunities, and maintaining roads.
Okay, I should link this one too before I go back to root. Should show 3 times. Yes. Perfect. Okay. Let's get a quick breakdown to make sure we know what's going on. The situation in the West Bank of late April 2026 is defined by a significant political push for local legitimacy, contrasted against the most restrictive security environment in over 2 decades. While the active war is concentrated in Gaza, the West Bank is experiencing what humanitarian organizations describe as a systematic tightening of control and a surge in internal displacement. The April 25th local elections. As we touched on earlier, the local elections held this past Saturday were the most significant political event in years. A fragmented vote. While the Palestinian Authority, PA, pushed for a unified election, it only took place in 183 local authorities, mostly in the West Bank and one municipality in Gaza. So that's why they're bringing it up so much, because one municipality in Gaza also joined. The electoral system, for the first time, a new open list proportional representation system was used for municipal councils, while smaller village councils use individual nomination. Fatah's performance. Supporters of President Mohamed Abbas won a majority of the contested seats. However, a significant 88% of candidates ran as independents. Oh, that's crazy. Signaling a deep public desire for alternatives to the traditional party structure. Record high movement restrictions. The day-to-day life of Palestinians in the West Bank is currently hampered by a physical blockade that has reached historic levels. The numbers: OCHA, the UN's humanitarian ring, recently mapped 925 movement obstacles across the West Bank, including checkpoints, gates, and earth mounds. This is the highest number recorded in 20 years. Economic toll. These restrictions have effectively atomized the West Bank, making it nearly impossible for workers to reach jobs or for goods to move between cities. Community displacement and settlement expansion. The landscape of the West Bank is shifting rapidly due to a combination of official military orders and settler activity. Displaced communities. Since January 2023, 45 Palestinian communities have been entirely displaced. In 2026 alone, 9 more communities were forced to leave their lands due to a coercive environment created by settler attacks and access restrictions. Demolitions. Large-scale demolitions of Palestinian structures continue at a high rate. UN experts warned in March 2026 that these measures are accelerating demographic composition change, particularly in the Jerusalem governance. So, like, I remember, how would I call that? Palestinian house surrounded by settler community. I want to find a specific picture. This, I think, is it. In a video, like, they had built like a Jewish community here, right? But someone refused to move out of where they currently lived, and they essentially blocked them off with a wall just around their house, and they have a little path leading out to like a road that they can use. Like, the lengths they go to are insane. I actually want to see if I could find this I remember watching a video on it. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to find the video. It was like in the middle of a documentary, so there's no way we're gonna be able to find it. Where was I reading? Okay. Security escalation and Jerusalem. Violence has intensified as military operations frequently spill over from the border regions into urban centers. The genocide extension warning. In early March 2026, UN expert issues a special alert warning that the intensity of military operations previously reserved for Gaza is now being seen in the West Bank. I mean, if you use it somewhere and it works, right? Of course they're going to start to use it there. Al-Aqsa compound. Tensions remain at a boiling point in Jerusalem. In 2025, there were over 73,000 settler incursions into the Al-Aqsa mosque compound, the highest in history. This continues to be the primary flashpoint that triggers wider unrest across the territory. What the heck is this? Summary of the current state. Government. Local council elected April 25th. Trend stabilizing politically. Movement 925 checkpoints/roadblocks. Trend worsening. Safety. High settler violence. Targeted IDF raids. Trend critical. Economy high unemployment. Fragmented markets. The trend is declining. The West Bank is currently a pressure cooker, where the recent local elections provided a brief outlet for political expression, but the underlying physical and economic restrictions are tighter than they have been in a generation. With the Palestinian Authority attempting to reassert control through these elections, do you think local government can actually succeed while these movement restrictions remain in place? I mean, movement restrictions are a nasty thing. Take you off the thing. Yeah. I don't know a lot of the history, like why Israel is here. There's like a lot of the world sees it as an occupation of the land. Okay, let's read this, and I'm going to ask it that as well. Al-Aqsa compound, also known as Al-Sharaf, or the Noble Sanctuary. Okay, that's a lot easier. Is a 35-acre religious site in the old city of Jerusalem. It is one of the most contested and sacred places of land in the world. Let's have a look at it from Temple Mount, Jerusalem. Al-Aqsa Mosque. We can go down. Let's have a look at this place. Ooh, it's like an old temple. That looks like a new temple over there. Look at that. Interesting. What is over here? It's a huge compound area, right? Look at that. So this is like one of their religious sites. This is Temple Mount. That building we were just looking at. And the first one was the Al-Aqsa Mosque. See if we can get a different angle of it. Oh, we're in the sun now. This is a place with historic importance. I mean, it looks old. Look at the old pillars that are just placed on the ground. Go that way? Can't. I mean, like, look at the detail, though, for how old this place is. That one has clearly come off. Somebody set it back. Probably not allowed. Okay. We had to look at it. People often use the name Al-Aqsa to refer to a single building. It is actually a walled plaza containing several important landmarks. The plaza, the mosque, the Dome of the Rock. The iconic gold dome octagonal structure at the center of the plaza is an Islamic shrine built over a sacred rock. The compound is unique because it is a holy site for two major world religions. In Islam, it is the third holiest site after those two. Muslims believe it is the location where the Prophet Muhammad was transported during the night journey and from which he ascended to heaven. It was also the first Qibla, the direct Muslim face for prayer. The direction Muslims face for prayer before it was changed to the Kaaba. Okay. In Jerusalem, the site is known as the Temple Mount. Okay, that's the other name we saw it. Right? The Temple Mound. It is the holiest site in Judaism because it is the location where the first and second temples stood in ancient times. According to Jewish tradition, it is also the site of the foundation stone, the place from which the world was created. So, in Islam, it is the third holiest site. In Judaism, it is the holiest site. The status quo. Due to its shared significance, the site is managed under a delicate set of rules known as the status quo. The compound is managed by the Jerusalem Islamic Waqf. Okay. A religious trust funded and overseen by the government of Jordan. Israel maintains overall security control of the site and its perimeters. Under the long-standing agreement, Muslims are permitted to pray on the compound, while non-Muslims are allowed to visit as tourists but are not permitted to pray there. Why it is a flashpoint, the compound is often the epicenter of religious tension in the context of your previous questions. Sovereignty, Palestinian view the site. Where is this on a broader yeah. Oh. So they drew the line and it's in the West Bank, part of Jerusalem, right? That's the city. The Temple Mound is there. So is this the old city, is this a whole thing? I Like, are those old walls? I see that. They are. So that was an old walled structure. I don't know. I like old. Okay, not what I was expecting to see in the center of this what I thought was a ruined area, but maybe I mean like a preserved area. Okay. Clearly, get me above ground image. Come on. Clearly, it's still very... Where's my... Oh, like... Oh. It's not what I was expecting at all. So this is the holy site. We have the Temple Mound and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That looks like old structures. You can't fall there anymore. All right. Where were we? There's another question I wanted to ask. What was it? I should ask it and then... Attempting to reassert control through these elections. I hear a lot that the West Bank is occupied. Can you tell me more information about that? Let it think for this one. You see, Claude, you really got to fix your voice mode. I despise that when I go into voice mode, it starts giving me like shorter, less engaged answers. Like this is not an improvement. This is something I have to work around. The term occupied refers to the legal and physical status of the West Bank under international law. Following the Six-Day War in 1967, at the time Israel captured the territory from Jordan, and it has remained under Israel military and civil control ever since. Like, isn't Israel still doing that? Like, it sounds like they have no intentions. In Lebanon, they've secured a certain amount of territory. It sounds like they have no intentions of giving it back. Unless they're forced to in a peace deal or something. So this does appear to be a tactic they've been using since 1967. To understand how this occupation works in 2026, it helps to look at the three distinct ways the land is divided and governed. Oh goodness, it's complicated already. The Area A, B, and C system. The West Bank is not governed as a single unit. Under the Oslo Accord, agreements from the 1990s that were meant to be temporary but are still in effect, the land is divided into three zones. Area A, about 18% of the land, includes major Palestinian cities like Ramallah and Nablus. The Palestinian Authority is responsible for civil life and internal security there. Area B, approximately 22%, includes Palestinian villages. The Palestinian Authority handles civil matters, education, health, but Israel maintains overriding security control. Okay. That doesn't sound like a good idea, but Area C, approximately 60%. This is the largest and most congenous part of the West Bank. Israel maintains exclusive control over security, planning, and construction. This area contains all Israeli settlements and most of the West Bank agricultural land and water resources. I mean, 60%, yeah, it's going to have most of the land. And given that this is cities and this is villages, this is everything else, right? Like, my understanding, when they built the town and they had to like lock that house in. Oh, I don't know. They had to like lock that house in. That's because it was like a rural house built there, and they were building a town in like a rural area. So that's how that happened. For years, the Palestinian family home stood amid swaths of farmland, but now it lies behind a yellow gate controlled by Israeli soldiers. Not the one I was reading. Settlements and international law. A major part of the occupation debate involves Israeli settlements, communities built by Israeli citizens on West Bank land, legal status, the United Nations and European Union, and the majority of international communities consider these settlements illegal under international law. Specifically, the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prohibits an occupying power from transferring its own civilian population into the territory it occupies. 2026 shift. In February 2026, the Israeli cabinet approved measures that significantly expanded their authority in the West Bank. This has been described by critics and legal experts as de facto annexation, as it moves administration power from the military to civil government institutions, effectively treating parts of the West Bank like sovereign Israeli territory. The physical reality, checkpoints and barriers, we've already talked about that. Why it's called an occupation. In a legal sense, it's called an occupation because military law. Palestinians in the West Bank are subjected to Israeli military law, while their Israeli neighbors and settlement subjects are subjected to Israeli civil law. Okay. Lack of sovereignty. The Palestinian residents do not have a sovereign state, a military, or control over their own borders, airspace, or water rights. Temporary versus permanent. International law views occupation as a temporary state following a conflict because this has lasted nearly 60 years and involves the permanent building of cities, settlements. Many international bodies argue it has become an illegal occupation or annexation. In short, occupied describes a system where one population, Palestinians, live under the military and administrative control of another state, Israel, without having the citizenship or rights of that state. Okay, so it was a part of Jordan. Then Six-Day War in 1967, it was occupied. Jordan's over here. Okay. All right, well, that just explains to me exactly how complicated that part of the world is. I mean, it's not a good situation, that's for sure.